Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am delighted to introduce Clare McCarthy. Claire recently graduated from Emory University in Atlanta with a degree in environmental sciences, and she's about to return there in just a couple of weeks to pursue a Master of Public Health in Environmental Health. I'm going to brag on Claire a little. I hope I don't embarrass her too much, but to borrow the words of several of the coworkers in my department, Claire is a star. This summer threw a number of challenges at us, some of which were anticipated. We were talking about a subject that in New England, people often very quickly disregard. Um, Other bumps in the road were not foreseen, but through all of it, Claire rose to every challenge. The caliber of her written work was excellent. She managed communicating with press, partner organizations, and town residents with great professionalism and ease. And so, with that, I'm so excited to turn this over to Claire so she can share her work with you.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was a really kind introduction. So first, I just want to thank Megan so much for being an amazing supportive support and inspiration throughout the summer. I could not have done it without her. Next slide, please. So all of us sitting on this Zoom call right now have actually lived through the hottest recorded month in history. So that was July 2023. If you've been reading the news this summer, you might have seen extreme heat mentioned in a lot of headlines. So it's definitely been a huge issue this summer and will only continue to increase in coming years with climate change. So this summer, my project looked at exactly that, addressing extreme heat in Groton, Connecticut. So extreme heat isn't affecting isn't as prevalent in New England as maybe in other parts of the country, but New England is definitely seeing unprecedented temperatures as well. Well, a lot of towns in New England aren't really prepared to respond to extreme heat. So I think of my summer work as occurring in these three different stages, which I've represented with this sunrise. So first, I wrote up a vulnerability assessment explaining the science behind heat vulnerability and also which parts of Groton are most vulnerable to heat. Secondly, I conducted research into what other towns are doing to respond to heat, while at the same time going out into the community with Megan and talking to Groton residents about their heat experiences and what they think the town should do. And then finally, based on all of that research, I developed a set of recommendations for how the town should respond to heat. Next slide, please. So my work is really organized into trying to answer these two questions. So firstly, how is Groton heat vulnerable? And secondly, how should the town respond? Throughout the whole summer, I considered a lens of social justice. So that's represented by the big red circle surrounding everything. So firstly, I looked into the heat impacts that are appearing in Groton. And I found several, and I learned a lot throughout this research, but one to highlight is Connecticut has one of the highest energy costs in the country. So as extreme heat events continue, air conditioning costs will be a lot higher. And right now, there aren't a lot of energy assistance programs dedicated to cooling costs specifically. Secondly, looking at how Groton is heat vulnerable specifically, I looked at how different heat vulnerable populations are distributed within Groton. For instance, where older adults tend to live or where outdoor workers tend to work. And then from that, I identified a couple of neighborhoods within Groton that are more heat vulnerable, such as Pequannock Bridge and City of Groton, which lies within the town of Groton. Thirdly, I looked into strategies that other towns are pursuing as potential heat response strategies for Groton. And I found a lot of creative work happening across the country. Like some places are painting the roofs of buildings white to reflect heat. And then lastly, I developed recommendations for Groton. So for example, one recommendation I made was to develop an early warning system to warn Groton residents about impending heat events, and also activate other town entities to provide heat relief resources. And in considering inclusion, I emphasize the importance of translating those warnings into Spanish. Next slide, please. So although the sun has almost set on my summer work, I'm confident that it will contribute to the next sunrise of climate action in Groton. So my mentor, Megan, is developing a multi-hazard climate action plan for the town. And so my work will directly contribute to the extreme heat portion of that plan. It will also serve as an example for other municipalities in the area who want to respond to heat. Um, and also, my summer work really created a space for people to think about the impacts of extreme heat and how to protect themselves from it. Whereas before the summer, people might not have considered how heat is impacting them, or really like had space to talk about it with other people. But personally, this experience has been extremely impactful. I've never really lived in New England before, or worked with municipal government. So a lot of new experiences this summer. And as Megan mentioned at the beginning, it wasn't always smooth sailing, but Megan and all of the town of Groton staff were incredibly supportive throughout it all. Um, so my ultimate career goal is to pursue work that helps me or that allows me to help communities prepare for the health impacts of climate change. And I'm not exactly sure what that will look like once I'm done with school, but this summer allowed me to experience one way that I might be able to pursue that mission. So thank you so much again to Megan and to all of the UNH team for this experience.
Fantastic. Thank you, Claire and Megan. We've got a lot of kudos coming in and then some questions. So how much do you think this summer's heat wave across the US has pushed people to take extreme heat in Groton more seriously? I was wondering this the same type of question, or if you saw it change over the summer as it got warmer.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Megan can speak to this a bit more since she talked to people about heat before the summer, but I think overall people were extremely receptive and willing to talk about the issue. So I think I got lucky that I was doing this project during such a hot summer, but Megan, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I think a little bit tough to gauge, but I think, in trying to share the impact of Claire's work, the silver lining of the terrible heat we've been experiencing was that it was already in the press. So when we went to our local newspaper and said, hey, we would really love if you could share the work that we're doing, they were all over it. And it was coming right on the heels of all of these headlines. So I like to think that, all of this happening at once has certainly helped move that needle a little bit, at least. And I think that the work Claire is doing or has done, the results of her work, is going to really help with the equity piece of it, in terms of trying to show people that although maybe they have the resources to keep cool, you can't make that assumption for the rest of town. And that being so important as to why we need to take further action moving forward.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, and kind of following along on that line of questioning, Tom is asking, he's saying it's great that the town is taking a proactive approach to extreme heat public health impacts. How did this come about as an area to work on?
Yeah, so I've been in this position for just shy of a year. So when I first heard about this fellowship program, I was only a couple months into this job. I was still trying to figure out what work had been done previously, and a lot of Groton's climate work focused on flooding, really sea level rise, as you would probably assume, us being a coastal community. And I think at that point in time, I was just reading a lot about heat and some of the research that was being done by the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation, and seeing different webinars, and said, that realized it was a gap in what the town had done, realized that it was something that we could develop a discrete project about. Sorry, I have automatic lights. And just using kind of that confluence to say, hey, let's throw it at the wall and see what sticks. We had no idea when we pitched this to UNH if it was going to be something that found traction. And we were just so fortunate to get Claire, especially since it really aligns well with her interests. And we felt like this could be a meaningful opportunity for her as we look at, her kind of trying to build a career towards this kind of work.
Thank you, Megan. Jesse just came in with a question, and then I had one quick question too. Claire, is the town monitoring temperature at a fine scale to identify hotspots or heat reservoirs?
This time, not yet, but one of my recommendations was actually to partner with the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation, because they've done studies in a couple of towns where they attach heat monitors to like different trees and lampposts around towns to figure out where those hotspots are. So I hope that will be a partnership that Groton can have in the future.
Awesome. And then just one more quick question, Claire. I know you did some community engagement as part of your work. Do you mind just sharing a little bit about what you did and how that came about, and maybe some of the results?
Yeah, of course. So we had a couple different routes of community engagement. So Megan and I set up tables at different community events and locations and just had like more casual conversations with people, like how do you stay cool during the summer? Are you worried about heat?
Did we lose Claire? Oh, there we go.
Oh,
We lost you for a second, Claire. I think you're back.
yeah. I'm not sure what you didn't heard or
I
didn't
think
hear.
you heard the casual conversations about how people stay cool during the summer, and then you froze.
Oh, okay. And then I also gave a public presentation about my summer work at the senior center. And then there was an ongoing like survey that people could complete either by paper or online. But yeah, some people were like surprised to think about certain ways that heat might impact them. Like a lot of people I talked to didn't really think about energy costs as an impact of extreme heat. But like once I like said that that is an impact, people were like, oh yeah, like and started thinking, I guess, more broader scale about how heat might impact them.
Thank you so much, Claire and Megan.